Thanks for having me.
All right, let's begin with Stacylita. And as our audience watches her recent victory in the Flower Bowl, she is number 8 in here, starting from the extreme outside post. Talk about this performance, if you would.
Well, it's another top performance by her. She didn't get the best of trips, having to go wide, and the way the pace was and all that. But nevertheless, she overcame it, and I was real happy with the effort.
Chad, when the course comes up a bog, which it did here, does it make it more difficult for you to accurately assess her effort?
Yes, it does. That's an excellent question. I really use particularly Ragusan numbers to evaluate after the race, much like my mentor Bobby Frankel did, how well the horse ran in the race and how much recovery time they'll need. When I found that with very yielding turf courses like that one, I don't put as much stock in the number because it's hard to compare that type of race condition to any other standard conditions horses run on. So I go more by feel, how they come out of the race and how they train after that. And so far, she's been training very good.
Ramon's now ridden her twice, in the Beverly D and here in the Flower Bowl. What's he said to you about her?
All positive. He likes the way she can switch off rating behind horses. He likes her turn of foot. He loves riding the filly. He hasn't said anything to me about her that would be on the negative side or any changes that we would make or anything like that. So it's all been positive news from him.
Now, we know she won in here, but what did Ramon say about how she handled the extremely soft conditions? Because you know there's always a chance of getting somewhat similar conditions next week at Churchill.
He thought she handled it fine, as she did in the Beverly D. The turf was quite yielding in Chicago that day also, and she definitely handles it well. I don't know that she needs to have it that way, but she can certainly handle it. And as you know from turf racing, yielding conditions can eliminate a lot of horses who can't handle it. So I think that's a big advantage in her corner.
Now, she's had a bit of a problem coming out of the race. She's got an infection in one of her eyes. Tell our audience about what's going on.
Well, in her victory in the Flower Bowl, she was most likely hit with a divot from the turf course, which is not uncommon in turf racing, particularly when the conditions are soft. You know, if I run 10 turf horses, normally I'll have one of them that comes back a couple of days later with a little bit of a puffy eye. So it's a pretty standard injury. However, with her, as time went on, it just wouldn't really clear up the way it's supposed to. And so we got more aggressive with our treatment, and we reached out to some specialists to really look at it and stay on top of it. So far, I feel like we have it under control, and she hasn't missed one day of training. She hasn't missed any of her feed. Her attitude's excellent. She looks good. She's happy. So, but the eye, it just hasn't 100% healed yet. So I breezed her yesterday actually, with a protective eye cup, which is perfectly clear. It just would prevent anything from hitting her. The turf was yielding yesterday when I breezed her, and she has a workmate she uses as a target every week. So I don't want to take any chances of another turf divot hitting it. The eye's very sensitive still as it heals. One more hit to it, might cause me to miss the race. So it's more of a precautionary situation. But overall, the filly's happy and healthy, and the long-term prognosis is excellent. It's just bad timing, that's all.
Will she race with that protective eye cup?
Most likely not. I think by the time I get to Friday, it's probably going to look pretty good, but I'm not ruling it out. If it's not 100% by then I might consider running her in it just to be safe. We certainly don't want anything to happen to Stacylita, in the long run, for the health of her eye or her in general. So we're real cautious with this filly. She means a lot to us. So we're not going to send her out there in the field of battle, if there's any risk of anything, hurting her in the long run. My plan is not to run her in it. If I have to run her in it, I will, and if I have to run her in it, I won't be feeling like it's a huge disadvantage for me. She trained all week in it this week. She breezed excellent in it yesterday, as well as she's ever breezed. So I don't think it's going to bother her if it's on or off. It doesn't restrict her vision in any way.
So it sounds, Chad, that the infection has not negatively impacted her training or her frame of mind. How has it impacted you? How worried are you about this 1 week out from the biggest race of her career, arguably?
Well, certainly it's been disappointing as, we came out of the Flower Bowl, and as this lingered and her eye just didn't look perfect, it was a little disappointing because you want things to go perfect. You don't want to have any problem, especially with a horse of this caliber. But overall, I really focus more on how she's doing out on the track. And from what I've seen there, I haven't seen any change at all. She's on top of her game that way. So, but it has been stressful having to deal with it. With this type of race coming up for her, and it is going to be her final career race. So, you'd like to see her go out on top with no complications at all going into the race. So, it's been a little tough dealing with it, but we have a lot of experience to fall back on.
11 furlongs around 3 turns next Friday. Your thoughts about mile and 3/8 for her?
I think she can handle mile and 3/8. I watched plenty of her races before they sent her to me, and she's won at a 1.5 miles before against a pretty good filly too, Dare Me. Yeah. She actually finished second and was put up disqualification. So I think she can handle it. I think there's a lot of other question marks with other fillies in the race that it may be more of a stretch for them than for me. So I'm okay with it.
All right, from the 5-year-old Stay Salita to the 2-year-old New York-bred filly Day at the Spa, a debut winner at Saratoga in a turf sprint. Here she is in her next start, the Natalma at Woodbine. She is number 12. Chad, she ran awfully well going from 1 5.5 furlong race to this 1 mile stakes.
Yeah, she really did. She stretched out nicely. We thought a lot of this filly all summer before we debuted her at Saratoga. She was just training really well, particularly when we got her on the grass course. So as soon as she broke her maiden, we picked these 2 races out. I figured the Natalma would be a good way to stretch her out. It's a 1-turn mile to ease her into those longer distances without having to take her around 2 turns. And now we'll try a 2-turn mile at Churchill. She switches off so nicely in the morning training that I don't think it's going to be any problem for her to relax and handle the 2 turns.
Chad, talk to our audience a little bit. Obviously, the Natalma was 1 mile. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf, same distance. The only difference is 2 turns versus 1 turn. What might that mean as far as your filly, who's got apparently rateable tactical speed? What's the difference between training a 1-turn mile versus 2?
Well, training-wise, you're just looking for them to settle more in a 2-turn race. It's a shorter run to that first turn, so generally everyone leaves out of the gate looking for position and then grabs a hold of the horse going on the first turn. So I have to make sure, training this filly, that when that happens and Ramon goes to grab her and tuck her in or put her where he wants to put her, that she will switch off and conserve energy for the rest of the race. From what I've seen, she's done that nicely. When I see horses not really willing to do that, then I'm more likely to just keep them in 1-turn races. So she's shown an ability to do this in the morning, switch off and relax. So I think she'll handle it fine.
And how is she doing coming up to next Friday's contest?
She's doing really well. I breezed her yesterday. Actually, she had pretty good company. She breezed with Stay Salita. Yeah. So if she can hold her own with Stay Salita, I don't think there's any Stay Salitas in this race coming up on Friday for her. So she breezed very well with her. She stayed right with her, and she had a head start on Stay Salita. Stay Salita caught up to her, but That's okay. Once she got a hold of her, Stacy Lita, they just hung in there and stayed right with her, even galloping out. So I'm very happy with my filly going in the race. I wouldn't trade with anyone going into the race.
All right, and finally, let's talk about your 2-year-old colt, Fantastic Song, who broke his maiden at first asking at Saratoga, then went on to the Pilgrim, and here he is, number 5. Chad, a bit of a disappointing effort in here. Talk about this, if you would.
Yeah, I really thought the horse would win the Pilgrim handicap in the race. It was a short field. I was the favorite in the race. But he really didn't handle the yielding turf that well. Not to make too many excuses, but he just, Javier rode him in his debut and in the Pilgrim, and right away when he came back, he said, I had him in perfect position. He just didn't kick the same way as he did in his maiden race on firm turf. Also, because of the short field and soft turf, the pace was slow. So I think he's a horse that really needs firm ground and some pace to run at, like he had in his debut at Saratoga when he ran so well. So that's what I'm looking for him. If the ground would be firm at Churchill, our plan is to go ahead and take him back like we did in his debut at Saratoga. I don't care where he is. I just want him to save ground in the rear, and there should be a lot more pace in that race, and then just make one run.
So your feeling is, and this may be Javier's feeling as well, he did not handle the extremely soft conditions of the Pilgrim nearly as well as the summertime conditions at Saratoga.
Correct. As the race was unfolding and I saw he was moving, I felt the same way. And then, as soon as Javier got off the horse, he said the same thing. So I'm not trying to make too many excuses for him, but what we saw the first time at Saratoga was, I thought, a better effort. He was on the extreme outside post. He's never run before, and he had to pass everyone and go so wide, and he beat Animal Spirits, who came back and won the Bourbon as a maiden. So, the running line was good. The number was good. So if he gives me that same race that he gave me in his debut at Saratoga, I think the horse is going to be right there.
In one of the recent articles in the Forum, it stated that Fantastic Song was on his wrong lead in the stretch and lost a couple of lengths to his workmate. How accurate is that? How concerned are you about that?
Not overly concerned. It's not what we're looking for exactly as we set the work up before they went out there, but because he couldn't handle the yielding turf as well, and the workmate actually went off a little too fast, and she actually relished the off-going yesterday out there. Midway through the breeze, you could see it wasn't a compatible matchup, but it was a matchup we had to do, based on the weather yesterday in New York. So at that point, Javier was breezing the horse, and he just concentrated on his horse and not the workmate anymore, and he got what he needed out of there. As far as him switching leads and stuff, when he got deep into the work, he just wasn't real comfortable. It was very yielding out there. So that's why he got a little, tired in the lane a little bit. But he came out of the breeze good, and like I said, I'm looking for firm turf. If it came up yielding over there, I probably wouldn't even run.
Chad, you also pre-entered Liquidity Trap for the juvenile turf, but you're not even going to ship him, are you?
No. He'd need about 5 defections to get in. He's a horse that's just starting to come around. Good-looking El Prado colt. Best days are probably ahead of him. We thought we'd take a shot and throw him in the mix if he could get in, but that's okay. We'll just regroup, and there's a couple smaller stakes for him, one at Aqueduct and one at Gulfstream in December, so I'll point him towards both those stakes, and hopefully we'll have a nice 3-year-old in the spring with him.
Chad, as always, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Our audience always looks forward to visiting with you on Down the Stretch, and all the best next weekend at Churchill with Stacy Lita and Day at the Spa and Fabulous Song. We wish you the best.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chad. Chad Brown, ladies and gentlemen, who will send 3 to next weekend's Breeders' Cup.